Jimmy Thang from Maximum PC here at GDC 2015. I'm here right outside Valve's booth. Speaking with CloudHead Games is Denny and Joel. And I just got out of Valve's VR experience, and these guys have made one of the games, arguably the most impressive demo in my opinion. Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, I'll sort of delve into a little bit more, but can you sort of tell us a rough idea of what the demo entailed and what the game is about?
Sure. I mean, so the Gallery 6 Elements is it's a pretty diverse big game. It's you're exploring these elemental worlds, looking for your sister who has been lost to you. But so for the demo for Valve, we just tried to focus really on the room scale experience and how to bring all of these technologies to bear that would make it a really fulfilling, interesting experience. Trying to get the player to move around the room and interact with different objects in a really kind of natural way. Yeah.
Yeah, so I should also mention that Valve's VR headset is unique in that it allows you to walk around the room. There's like essentially two infrared cameras placed in the room at opposite ends of the corner, and then it sort of maps out the boundaries of where you can walk. And that to me was a little bit trippy, because it's like, I guess how it works is the game tailors the size of the room, the virtual room, depending on how big your real physical walking space is. How does that work? That was my big question.
So I mean, within the SDK, you can basically define your room dimensions. So if you only have like a 4x4 play area, you can actually set that so the system understands that I can only go here, I can only go this far, or you can scale it up to like 15 by 15 feet. And so really, however big your room is, you can kind of scale the system to accommodate that.
Yeah, I mean, our demo specifically was built for this size of room. It was really, kind of a proof of concept for this technology, and so we built it specifically for this 12 by 16 volume. But when the consumer version comes out, everyone's going to have different size rooms, obviously. So there's more to this puzzle than just having one room demos like that. So we need ways to move the actual volume around in the game world, and that's kind of what we're working on next. So.
Okay. So just to walk you through my experience of the demo, see, I should also mention that Valve has like controllers with it as well. It looks sort of like Wiimotes or like a Razer Hydra. What's really interesting about it is that the infrared cameras also track the controller, so you can see the controller in the game. And that, I didn't even really think about that, and that helped immensely.
It's actually lasers. They're lighthouse stations are lasers, and they're projecting. They're doing like a wide swath of laser projection in the room, so it knows very precisely where the controllers are in the space. Yeah, it's a great system. We kind of built the game originally for Razer Hydra, because that was the only thing we could really develop with at the time. It was the best thing to use one-to-one tracking with for development. And this kind of represents the sort of the dream realized. It's the higher level VR experience that we could actually build towards for real.
It's the holodeck. It's the holodeck, right? It's what everybody wanted. Yeah.
It feels like the closest thing to a holodeck to me. I think we're almost there. There was no, as far as I know, there was no external camera like Oculus. Are they using like a gyroscope solution, or?
It's basically, it's a little hard to explain the tech from a low level, but there's these lighthouse boxes that are scanning the room constantly with lasers, and they're not really scanning, they're just kind of projecting the laser at a constant rate, I think it's 60 hertz. And the headset and the controllers and really anything can pick up the lasers, and so using that, it can determine where it is in the room. And can't tell you exactly how the Valve magic works, but all of the data is coming from the headset and the hands itself. The Lighthouse unit itself has no data from it at all.
It's not connected to the PC at all. So
it's just projecting a laser.
Exactly. Yeah. And the controllers and the headset both have cameras. All those little sensors are cameras, and they're looking for the lasers in the space. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I should mention that when the guy set up the demo, he said the towers, the light towers, is that what you call them? Lighthouses. They were just plugged into power. That was it.
Exactly.
So I mean,
you can like scatter these things around. Like, so if you had like a barn and you wanted to use your warehouse or your barn as your VR space, you could totally do that.
If you want to bring your desktop into the barn, I guess.
Or you can just shrink it down, and if you're sitting at your desk, it works the same way, right? Yeah.
Cool. And to sort of walk viewers through your demo. So it starts off, you have this controller that also has a little button at the end, so you can like grab objects. You can click it to sort of like pick up objects and things like that. And so it starts off. you're like I'm almost in like a old like a mine, like a sort of a mine that you would see in like Lord of the Rings or something like that, like the mines of Moria or something like that, and then and off in the distance there is this giant rock monster. His name's Boulder, and he seems friendly enough. And so he was sort of talking to me, and I don't know, breaking stuff or whatever. And I was in this like elevator type thing, and I was in this mine, and I was just picking up different like helmets, and I saw like Skyrim like helmets and things like that, and just picking them up, and I was like actually tossing them at the monster. That was pretty cool.
So it felt intuitive to you.
Well, it was just yes, but it was just like you have a natural curiosity. It's like, okay, you can pick this up, and then I was like, I bet you it's not gonna work if I try to throw it.
Right.
And then you just throw it, and it feels so natural.
One of the big systems that you may or may not have noticed that we had in our demo was the interaction system, where you could grab the levers and kind of pull things up and down and twist things, and the floor handle thing that you can lift up. I don't know if you saw any of that, but that system's something we've been working on for a long time, since before we were even working with Valve, and it's really what CloudHead Games specializes in at this point is trying to figure out how interactions are going to work in VR, because it's one thing to put on a helmet and just stand there and look around in a beautiful world, right? But you want to actually be able to reach out and touch and grab things, and you can pick up objects, but then to actually be able to manipulate things in the world opens up the gameplay opportunities, right? That's what really is going to allow us to build the game, to be able to ask the player to do things and require them to.
You want to meet expectations, because when you have that freedom to move around and use your hands and it's all one-to-one and perfect, you as the player have an expectation that things are just going to work the way they should work in real life. So we're building all these systems to accommodate that kind of interaction.
I gotta say though that there was one thing. There was a element of trust, and this is not pertaining to your game, but the actual experience of it is like I couldn't. I'm sure the boundaries are accurate, but I just didn't feel comfortable walking out that far.
It's one thing that will happen, I think, once this rolls out to consumers. Once you set your bounds, the element of trust is something that you learn. So you learn to trust the system. And there's also some interesting things that haven't been really fully developed yet. Like there's pass-through cameras on the front of the headset. So there's all kinds of possibilities to extend where the sort of liability and safety issues will come into play. Like you could use the pass-through potentially to move up to the edge of the volume and then actually see your real room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed it, but they have a system called the chaperone system, and if you get close enough to a real-world wall, you'll actually see a graphical representation of that wall show up in the game. And so this is a system that Valve's been working on that is essentially underlying all games that will use Steam VR, so that there's this kind of third-party safety middleware there that anytime you're in a room-scale environment, when you see that wall, okay, that's a real-world boundary that I should not cross. And it takes a little while for your brain to learn how all those things work together, but it's just a new design language that gamers are going to pick up on pretty fast, I think.
Yeah, I think there was like one or two demos where I saw that. Oddly enough, in the Valve demo, there wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I actually like stuck my hand and I touched the wall. I was like, oh, I didn't even know it was there. So I was like, I don't really know if I trust this right now. But can you just sort of touch upon? Well, I just want to go back to like how do you as game developers scale the experience to different size rooms?
Yeah.
So like like let's say you compare the huge barn to like an apartment in San Francisco that's tiny.
Well, as a developer, you kind of, with this system being in play now, you have to kind of account for being seated at your computer, because some people just aren't going to want to get up and walk around. So they're going to want to sit on their couch or at their desk. So you have to compile a system that'll work for a seated experience or a standing experience where you're not actually moving around, but you're just kind of, you can rotate freely, or like a full volumetric room scale experience where you can walk around. So that's another system that we're working on right now to accommodate all these different movement modes, basically.
Yeah. And to be honest, like not all those problems are solved yet, and it's something that we're experimenting with a lot now that we have some basic experience with all this tech. First thing we're doing when we get back is trying to solve all those problems, and we have a lot of good ideas of how we're going to do it. And it's kind of what we've been doing since the beginning, is trying to solve all kinds of problems with VR, and we've had some success along the way. So I'm confident that us and other developers will figure out ways to make all of that work. But it's all going to come down to moving that room scale volume somehow, right? And finding intuitive ways that feel good to move that actual room scale volume around the world. It's a little hard to wrap your head around. We've been working with it for a few months, so we get it, but it's a little hard. It's a little mind-bending at first to try to think about.
Just to go back to your specific demo, so as I was in the elevator, things started falling apart. The environment started crumbling and things started breaking and things like that. And the elevator, I believe, started going up. And once I reached the top, you essentially saw like a vista, and then you saw like a bridge walkway type of thing. And then you see the rock monster sort of like lead you in this direction, and like towards the direction of the bridge, and then the demo ends. So it looks like it's almost asking you to walk across the bridge. The problem though is the bridge looks really far, and the room, while it's a decent sized room, it's not be able to like allow you to walk that physical distance. So how are you guys making the game? How are people going to be able to traverse through your environment?
Well, and every game developer is going to face this, but so we're figuring out ways to locomote the volume, which is a weird thing to get your head around. So you have this established volume, and then it's about how you push that volume through 3D space. So you can kind of take standard game paradigms where you're just using left joystick to move around. You can apply that to a volume that's movable, right? So you can shuffle the volume into the bigger game world, and then you can actually freely move around again. Like there's a few different ways to handle it.
So you're bringing the environment, the bridge closer to you.
Exactly.
Okay.
In a way, but it should feel like you're traversing through the environment. So, like we said, we still have a lot of experimenting to do with exactly how we're gonna solve these problems, and so do all the developers, frankly. But Valve's done some interesting experiments as well with teleporting the volume, so you kind of can project the volume into a certain location. You say, I want to move the volume over there, and you project it and press a button, and then now you're there, and you can walk around that area and explore it. And then you want to go over there, so you can kind of project the volume over there. It sounds very abstract and unusual, and maybe not, the perfect VR immersive experience that everyone thinks about, but the reality that we've found is that the human brain is very malleable, and there's certain things that don't sound like they will work or feel good, but then they do. Yeah. And there's certain things that do sound like they'll feel good, but then they don't. So VR is really right now just all about experimentation and solving those problems by just trying lots and lots of different things. And we're confident that we and other developers will find solutions for that.
It's going to teach gamers the language for interacting with VR. Like there is a language that's being established, I think, and that'll kind of coalesce over the next year, I think.
Yeah.
So right now I'm sort of picturing to be able to walk in your game, maybe you're just standing in one place and you're going like this, and then the environment's like closing in on you. Is that sort of what you're getting at here?
Pretty much. I mean, there's a few ways to do it, but that's one way. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll also try things where you're literally pressing the stick forward, and so you almost have two locomotion modes. You have your actual room scale, real life moving around in the volume, but then you also have kind of a different locomotion mode where you're pressing the stick, and now your character is walking forward with the whole volume. So in real life, you're staying still, but the character is moving forward through the world, right? So that's the kind of thing we'll be experimenting with, different ways to handle that. And it's, as long as you're in a room that's small, we're always going to have to find ways to locomote the player around, but we know there's good solutions out there. So
like to me that sounds like it solves one problem, but it perhaps opens up another in locomotion issues, the motion sickness.
Yes, exactly.
Where your brain feels like you're moving, but your body doesn't. Yeah. So I mean, like there were no demos in there that did anything like that. Yeah. Would you say that element is still there in Valve's solution?
Well, so one of the things we solved for early, like last year, was something called VR Comfort Mode. And it's a mode where, like, if you're using the joystick to locomote, like to move your character through a 3D space, the big thing that kills people in VR that makes them feel sick is rotational velocities. That's the thing that makes your brain go, like if you're not actually driving that by rotating your body. So we came up with this system which is basically like quick snap turns around a dial, and it kind of mimics saccade movements with your eyes when they're darting around really quickly. Like you don't consciously register that stuff, but so we've kind of emulated that in software so that when you turn very quickly, you don't actually get that vestibular disconnect, you don't feel sick. So we'll be applying things like that to joystick-based locomotion when you're moving the volume or if you're turning with the volume, that kind of stuff.
But that said, with Valve's solution, because it has full 360-degree tracking, we don't need to worry about rotation. Because, like Denny was saying, what makes people sick more than anything is the rotation. Moving straight forward through space doesn't usually make people sick in VR. So as long as you can turn to the direction that you want to face and then move the character through space going forwards without having to rotate, then there shouldn't be a vestibular disconnect problem in the same way. It's always going to be a little bit of one, but like we said, that's only one way to handle it, and there's a lot of other ways to move that volume, like through teleporting, and there's already been a lot of experiments. So yeah,
the solutions are there. It's just a matter of fine-tuning which one works best, honestly. Yeah.
So the device is going to be, the headset at least is going to be wired. And are you guys worried about the wire going down on the ground and then you're turning and you're stepping over and things like that?
Yeah, the wire on the headset is still one of the challenges with it, really. I mean, there's no way around it. That tether, because of latency with wireless, it's going to be an issue for a little while. So that's something Valve's working on, and it's really kind of up to them, and probably in collaboration with people like us to figure out the best way to handle it. But again, it's kind of an engineering problem, and there's a lot of ways to. HTC is working on it as well, and yeah, there's a lot of ways to make that better. And one of the ways is by making that cable just really thin, and also to have it maybe attached to a certain part of your body that doesn't get tripped up with you as much. But I will say that after working with this system for 3 months now, every day, when I first tried it, I felt very, like I was stepping very gingerly cautious because I was afraid of the cable. After a while, getting used to it, you kind of develop a sixth sense for where that cable is, because you can kind of feel it on your body, right? And you learn to kind of work around it and not get tripped up on it. It just kind of becomes a subconscious thing. But again, that's something Valve and HTC are working on, so it's not a fully solved problem yet, but. Yeah.
You do build it's like a learned behavior. Like you get where it is spatially, and then you sort of forget about it. Yeah.
How long? I mean, I was really blown away by the demo, and I think you mentioned that you guys have been working on it since December, which is not that long ago. It's just the beginning of March now. I mean, how? Can you walk us through the process of creating the demo and the game and things like that?
I'll say that every asset had to be scrutinized. We had to hit 90 frames a second to get low persistence so that you actually felt present in the game world. So it was an incredible challenge making every asset perform and performant. It was always a conversation in the office about being perf friendly. So that was a big stress and strain, but we made it there.
Yeah, and the game itself has been in development for over 2 years now, and really the CloudHead team is kind of half game developer, half research and development company, because we've spent a lot of time experimenting with VR to try to solve all of these kinds of problems that we're talking about. And so this demo, even though we were only working on it specifically since December, a lot of the things, systems, and ideas that you saw in the demo were the result of the last 2 years of our work, right? So it's only been a few months, but really there's a lot more in there that we were able to put in because of how far ahead we were, frankly.
Yeah, and Valve kind of handpicked teams that were already kind of dipping into this stuff, and I had showed Chet a demo of the gallery. It was a beach demo, and we had already sort of accounted for how you interact in the space with hand tracking and all that stuff. And so obviously it kind of made sense to get us working on this system. Yeah.
Cool. And you mentioned before that you started with Oculus. Is this going to be an Oculus as well, or is it exclusive to Valve? Or
right now we're developing for as many hardware partners as we can. Steam VR is still an open platform, so this demo currently works on a DK2. The only problem is you don't have the hand controllers, which are important. Obviously, you can't really play the demo without them. But because Steam VR is sort of a third-party middleware, it can actually run on multiple headsets. So yes, we're supporting the Rift. We will be. We're not exactly sure what the input solutions are going to look like in the long run, as far as what Oculus is going to do and what Valve's going to do and what any other of these companies are going to do. It's still a lot of it's up in the air, but we're pretty committed to supporting as many platforms as we possibly can, really. Yeah.
So it seems like you actually view them as like complementary partners. To me, it seems like they're almost competition. Like, how do you?
They're competition with each other. Yeah. They're competition with each other, but we just want everybody to get along,
As
really, because
developers, we don't want a console war, but you know, it is what it is. We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah. And different people are pushing in different ways. There's a lot up in the air right now about how this is all going to play out. GDC's been very interesting so far, as you know, seeing what's happening with all the different announcements. But really, we're just dedicated to making the best VR experience possible and making it as widely available as we possibly can. And we're willing to work with anybody who has the same goals. Valve currently has been very forthright with us and, you know, helping us, giving us hardware and involving us in the process of actually fine-tuning the hardware and figuring out how to work with the hardware. So we're very much grateful and excited to be working with them. And they currently have the best tracking solution.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. And when can the users expect the game to come out?
The game is going to be out when the headsets come out. So I believe HTC has said they're coming out this year. So you can expect the Gallery 6 Elements to also be out whenever the Vive comes out. We'll be there.
Cool. Awesome. For more information on VR, check out MaximumPC.com.